After 10 years of pursuit, I finally married my beloved Omega, but my body was taken away by someone from another world. He was in my face, beating my lover. Used my voice to insult my baby. After 3 whole years, I finally got my body back. I opened my eyes and saw my Omega holding a knife across his neck. He said to me with tears in his eyes, "If I die, will you let me go? If I die, will you let me go?" This is what I saw the moment I got my body back. My lover, the Omega whom I pursued for 10 years, is holding a knife to his own neck. He knelt on the ground and looked up at me. Those eyes were full of sorrow, tears rolled down her cheeks, wetting the carpet. No, that's not the case. My voice began to tremble as well. Seeing the knife about to cut his skin, his first reaction was to grab his knife. But I just raised my hand. Leonard Brooks shuddered violently. His shoulders were raised in fear and his eyes were helpless, like a kitten that was bullied and stressed. The sharp knife accidentally cut his neck. Bright red blood oozed out. With a little more force, he could have cut his throat. I was so scared that I quickly raised my hands. "Leonard, be careful with the knife, I don't mean to hurt. Stay away from me." He let out a roar, raised the knife with both hands, and pointed it at me emotionally. "Go, go. Go quickly." His eyes were frighteningly red, his clothes were torn, and his exposed arms were covered with bruises and scars. My breathing hitched, and the pain in my heart was uncontrollable. I really want to hold him in my arms, comfort him, and kiss him. But after calming down for a moment, I stepped back decisively. "Baby, I'm leaving. Don't be impulsive and put the knife down, okay?" Leonard was stunned for a moment, his eyes filled with confusion, and he actually dropped his hands. I breathed a sigh of relief and released soothing pheromones at the same time, trying to persuade him to put down the knife completely. The fresh scent of lemon slowly spreads in the air. This is his favorite flavor. I opened my arms slightly, expecting him to jump into my arms like he did before. But what he got in return was Leonard's scream. He suddenly covered his head with both hands and curled up into a small ball. Rose-scented pheromones leaked out from the back of his neck, but were covered tightly by Leonard. The tip of the knife was pressed against the back of his neck, almost breaking his flesh in the chaos. I was so frightened that I couldn't move. The gland is the lifeline of the Omega. If it is injured, the Omega will be paralyzed if not dead. I yelled, "Don't hurt the gland." But Leonard seemed not to hear what I said. His whole body was shaking and his teeth were chattering. "Don't hit me, I didn't release pheromones on purpose." I was stunned. He stopped when he was about to rush forward and snatch the knife away. My mind uncontrollably recalled the unbearable beginning of all this. Leonard's first estrus. An Omega's first estrus period requires a medium to begin. It usually starts from the wedding night and lasts for about 7 days. Only by completing the first lifelong marking comfortably and happily can the pain and intolerance of the Omega's future estrus period be alleviated. I read countless materials and made adequate preparations, just to give Leonard a good experience. He blushed and buried his head in my arms, while greedily absorbing my pheromones like a puppy, while shyly saying that he was the luckiest Omega in the world for marrying me. Oh my God! Obviously, I am the luckiest alpha because I married him. What a wonderful future! I held Leonard in my arms and imagined with him our wonderful future life. We will run this little home together and have a cute and healthy baby. An Omega in estrus is so excited that he cries. We held hands and repeated our wedding promises. We should love each other until we are old and stay together until the end of life. But this happiness is short-lived like a bubble. The marriage was broken on just the 3rd day. My body was taken away by the alien Clarence Kelly. Leonard, like he did yesterday, shyly leaned into my arms, seeking comfort. But the person who woke up was not me, but the devil from another world. Clarence kicked Leonard off the bed. How could the weak Omega in estrus withstand such a kick? Leonard rolled to the ground, holding his stomach and convulsing, and immediately vomited blood. Clarence checked himself hastily, breathed a sigh of relief and got out of bed. He even stepped on Leonard's head viciously. He said, "Men and men are so fucking disgusting. Who the hell do you think you are to climb into my bed? Leonard fell to the ground and looked at Clarence helplessly. He didn't bother to wipe the blood from the corner of his mouth, but just grabbed Clarence's sleeve with trembling hands. Are you feeling uncomfortable? Did I take too many pheromones and make you lose control of your emotions? I didn't think so. Leonard forced a smile. Don't be afraid, I'll give you pheromones and you'll be fine. He struggled almost as hard as he could to squeeze pheromones out of his glands, which were already depleted due to estrus. The scent of roses wafts in the air. Leonard looked over expectantly. Smell it for you. Okay, are you feeling better? Clarence, however, covered his crotch with his hands and showed an angry expression. You bitch, you actually dared to seduce me. Do you want to die? The textbooks say that an alpha will have a physiological response to the pheromones of a beloved omega. Even though my soul was taken away, my body remained loyal to Leonard out of reflex. This made Clarence, who was pretending to be me, extremely furious. He grabbed Leonard's neck and pushed the weak omega into the cold water pool more and more fiercely. If you give me that smell again, if you dare to seduce me again, I'll kill you. I recalled those terrible times. Seeing Leonard cowering in front of me, my heart ached. The omega that was not properly cared for during its first estrus period developed a chronic illness. Whenever there are mood swings, pheromones are leaked. The estrus period will become increasingly difficult. But Clarence is not just talking nonsense. He hated Leonard's approach, and once he smelled the scent of roses, he would humiliate Leonard. No food, no water, no sleep. But Leonard is an omega who is deeply marked by this body. He has an almost instinctive dependence on this body. The most serious incident was when the rose-scented pheromones triggered the alpha's susceptible period. Clarence believed that Leonard was deliberately seducing her and actually broke Leonard's leg. Regardless of Leonard's already poor physical condition, he locked him up in a dark basement. My baby, who is afraid of the dark, huddled in a corner, crying out to the sky and the earth for help, but no one answered. This cycle repeated itself, and Leonard developed a strong stress response. Even now, as I stand in front of him, I am an alpha who loves him deeply with all my heart. He still cringes at the prospect of leaking pheromones. If I acted impulsively, Leonard might have been so scared that he would have stabbed the knife directly into the gland. Don't be afraid. I took a few steps back and spread out my hands. Look, baby, I didn't take anything. I won't bully you or let you get hurt, right? Let's put the knives down. Leonard tilted his head, then actually lowered his arm and loosened his grip on the knife. I was stunned too. All the sweet words I had prepared were useless? Who would have thought that Leonard slowly closed his eyes? Baby. He hummed the words in his mouth, a nostalgic expression on his face. After a long time, he looked at me blankly. You just called me baby, and I thought I heard it wrong. Now he's yelling again, and am I hallucinating? Leonard's dazed expression made me feel uncomfortable. When we were in love, I held him in the palm of my hand, called him my baby, and was afraid that I could not express my love for him. But Clarence, who took over my body, dislikes omegas who go into heat anytime and anywhere, and he dislikes even more the men who have had sex with his body. He called Leonard to come and went at will. When you are happy, call him to eat. When you disturb his leisure time, call him a bitch or even something else, an animal that gets in heat anytime and anywhere. Thinking of these, the hatred in my heart couldn't stop growing. If you treat other people's hearts like this, you deserve to be torn into pieces. Leonard in front of him awkwardly raised the corners of his mouth, but his eyes were filled with uncontrollable loneliness. It's been a long time since I heard this voice call me baby so tenderly. I'm still very happy. Almost without thinking, I said loudly, Leonard is my most beloved baby. Baby, come here and let your husband hug you, okay? Without warning, a tear rolled down Leonard's eyes. There was endless sadness in those beautiful eyes. He seemed to have understood everything a long time ago, and after tasting the sweetness, he calmly accepted the humiliation he had to face. You gave me a candy, what else are you going to lie to me about? Cheat. I couldn't say anything more, my voice was hoarse. This was the cruelest thing Clarence had ever done to Leonard. This is also the thing that I cannot forgive my body for the most. This scumbag, who knew he might never be able to go back, invented a new game out of craziness. That is, to play with Leonard's mind. Leonard was like a small fish. As soon as Clarence stretched out the hook, he would immediately open his mouth and bite it. So Clarence had a lot of fun, and it worked every time. Usually, be nice to Leonard and let him think he has turned over a new leaf. The endless night finally saw the dawn. Leonard was ecstatic, cheering and throwing himself into the arms of the alpha. Next second, the shiny leather shoes pressed against Leonard's chest and kicked him hard. He bent down, pinched Leonard's chin condescendingly, and spoke cruelly to his eyes that still contained joy. "What are you dreaming about, bitch? I will never look down on you in my life. Don't be a slut. What kind of man is a man who lets other men have sex with him? Why don't you be a woman? If you are a woman, I will touch you. How about that?" Each word was more humiliating than the last. Those eyes that sparkled with joy gradually dimmed and became dull again. Leonard said nothing after being humiliated. He just lowered his head silently, tears secretly filling his eyes. Like a helpless child who can't find a big tree to shelter him. "I thought you..." The heartbroken Omega swallowed the rest of the words and fled while covering his wound. Behind him came the endless laughter of Clarence and the female beta in his arms. "You won't leave even after this. Omegas are really mean." Yeah, the marked Omegas are like dogs that have recognized their masters. You can't chase them away. We betas are still normal. Before marriage, Leonard was an independent and sober Omega. Since he still refused to leave even after all this, I could only attribute it to the mark. In this way, he will be easily fooled again and again. So, after a while, Leonard began to lose the distinction. Can't tell which ones are joking and which ones are sincere. Even now that I'm back, he's still trembling with fear. Thinking of this, I felt even more pity in my heart. The most urgent task is to coax him to put down the knife completely, calm down and not hurt himself. I didn't dare to act rashly, so I had to comfort him softly. "I didn't lie to you, and I will never lie to you again." "You won't lie." Leonard interrupted me in a shrill voice. He smiled, looking miserable. "But why don't I believe it?" He glanced at the knife in his hand, opened his 5 fingers one by one, and then clenched them tightly. This is the micro-action when making up your mind. I felt like every hair on my body was about to explode. "No!" Leonard quickly raised his hand and cut his wrist with the knife. I subconsciously lunged forward. Leonard immediately held the knife across his neck and yelled, "Don't move forward. If you move forward, I will cut your throat." The sharp blade pressed against the fragile throat again. I stopped in my tracks and waved my hands hurriedly. "No, no, no." "Heh," Leonard laughed sarcastically, "you are really afraid of my death, because all the money in our family is with me, right? How could that be? I only care about you." The fear of almost losing Leonard made me sweat all over. "Don't worry," Leonard lowered his eyes and looked at his wrist, which was covered in blood. "You won't die if you cut it." "I've tried it." "Then aren't you curious about why I cut it?" I shook my head hastily, my eyes meeting his raised wrist. The piece of skin he cut was slightly raised. It's like being injured before, and because it wasn't treated properly, it became infected and swollen. I had a bad feeling in my heart. He swallowed and said, "Wait, why?" Leonard laughed. "Because I want to hide my precious things." As if he felt no pain, he dug his fingers into the wound, stirring and digging at it expressionlessly. A bright circle stained with blood fell on the tiles with a crisp sound. I immediately realized that it was the wedding ring I designed for Leonard. "I don't want the ring anymore. He died a long time ago. So I won't keep it for you anymore." My heart moved, as if something flashed through my mind. Before he could catch it, Leonard rushed to the balcony without hesitation. There, the windows were open, there were no guardrails, and outside was a 7-story building. My heart skipped a beat. By the time I realized what was happening, I had already rushed forward and grabbed Leonard by his clothes. But the clothes that barely covered the body were shabby and could not bear the weight of an adult, even though Leonard was terribly thin. The moment the cloth was torn and fell from a tall building. I climbed over the railing before Leonard and held him in my arms. Leonard looked incredulous, as if this was another new way I was humiliating him. The wind blew past my ears and cut my skin so painfully. I want to explain a lot to him. Tell him it's not me who treats him like that. Leonard will always be Marvin Young's favorite. Even if I kill myself, I won't hurt him at all. But in the end, I just kissed his eyes with heartache. Don't be afraid, baby. I will always love you. I will be with you and die together. God really favors me. We had an argument at the window, and all of this was seen by an old man who was taking a walk downstairs, who called the police. A large inflatable mat was laid where the fall occurred. The alpha's strong body saved me from only minor injuries. But even though I held Leonard tightly in my arms and used my body as a cushion for him, he still fell unconscious on the spot and was taken to the hospital. I'm guarding him. Clarence has his own favorite female beta and ignores Leonard. So, it has been a long time since I have seen him so closely. Leonard's eyes were still closed, his hair was draped softly over his forehead, his face was pale, and he had lost a lot of weight. But even in his sleep, his brows were still tightly furrowed, as if he was worried. I held the ring he had thrown away, feeling a strange feeling in my heart. I remember. The ring was kicked away by Clarence. That was Clarence's third day in this world. The Omega who had exhausted his pheromones in an attempt to awaken his partner's consciousness was thrown out the door by Clarence. Leonard lay on the ground, breathing weakly, unable to get up. And Clarence, cursing, returned to the house, seeking a way to return to his own world. I watched him put the knife across his neck, feeling inexplicably excited. At this point, I only have one thought in my mind. Let me die. It doesn't matter whether Marvin's physical body dies or not, as long as my Omega is no longer harmed. Just as the knife was about to cut, a loud noise was heard outside. It was Leonard, unlocking the door with his fingerprint. He forced himself to crawl in little by little. He held the ring and wedding video I gave him when I proposed to him in his hands. Leonard was obviously still scared, but he still asked stubbornly, Marvin, you said you would always be with me and treat me well, don't you remember? 7. I have never dared to recall that day. An angry Clarence rushed over and stepped on Leonard's hand, breaking it. A very clear sound of bone cracking. Leonard covered his wrist and rolled over in pain. But the ring was kicked away. He just crawled to pick it up, but Clarence grabbed it back by the hair. Idiot! You give a shit if I want to die. You look so energetic. Did I go easy on you? Clarence forcefully stuffed the broken disc into Leonard's mouth. The fair and delicate cheek was cut by the fragments and Leonard's mouth was full of blood. My Marvin. He choked, trembled, and cried. Leonard kept calling my name, but he had no idea that the soul of this body had already been replaced. I was trapped in a corner of this body, and no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't stop it. I could only watch Leonard shed heartbroken tears. The ring was picked up by Clarence and thrown into the sewer in front of Leonard. The ring is gone, and I can't find it anymore. What do you think? Are you angry? The water in the sewer was rushing fast, and the ring as big as a nose disappeared in an instant. I also thought that the ring was lost. But it turns out that, in front of the bed, I touched his thin wrist, and my whole body was shaking uncontrollably. How much effort did it take to find this ring? It took a lot of courage to cut open your own flesh. Stuffing a dead object into one's wound. Then you have to endure the body's rejection of foreign objects, the pain of inflammation, and the suffering of high fever. Covering my face, my tears dripped from between my palms. But, if not hidden in the body, where else can it be hidden? All the traces of our love in the house. Our wedding photos, the plaster dolls we made together, and couple items were all smashed by Clarence. Clarence laughed at him. Can you stop being such a jerk? Pack up your junk and get out of here, please. I feel terribly distressed being trapped in my physical body. I prayed for Leonard to leave, for him to be free of the mark and attachment to this body. Leonard had his own house before he got married. Excellent Omegas can live well away from here. But Leonard refused. He sobbed quietly, picked up the things one by one, and held them preciously in his arms. And I have to speak to Clarence firmly. I'm going to stay here. I want to protect our home and my Marvin. I shuddered at the memory of the past. What Leonard said before he jumped off the building sank into my mind. I don't want the ring anymore. He died a long time ago. So I won't keep it for you anymore. I got goosebumps all over my body. I stood up suddenly and looked closely at Leonard's face. Who is this he, who died long ago? Is it my soul? Could it be that Leonard knew I was possessed by another spirit ever since this body started behaving strangely? Everything that was wrong in the past few years flashed before my eyes one by one. When Leonard was thrown out of the door by Clarence, his eyes were already filled with sadness. As someone who knows him well, I know that if he is disappointed, he will leave. But when Clarence held the knife across my neck, I felt a strong desire to die. Leonard crawled back. Even though he himself suffered even more inhumane abuse, he managed to prevent this body from bleeding to death on the spot. Afterwards, Leonard always followed Clarence closely. He put away his knife, hid his scissors, and even always checked the natural stove. I thought he was afraid of being abused again. What if he is afraid that I will commit suicide again? It turned out that holding the ring and the CD, they repeated the promises made at the wedding. Not trying to wake me up, but knowing that my body was taken away, he begged me not to give up my life. He will wait for my return. My heart felt like it was being squeezed by a huge hand, and it hurt so much that I could hardly stand. So yeah, he refused to leave even when I was humiliated, because he was protecting my body. Clarence's game was successful again and again, and Leonard thought I was back, so he was fooled again and again. When Clarence found a female beta, he would repeatedly interrupt their kissing and sex, even if he was beaten. Leonard understood my feelings for him and didn't want anyone to defile my body, fearing that I wouldn't be able to accept myself as I am now when I came back. I covered my face and tears kept falling. That female beta was wrong, and I thought she was wrong too. Leonard is not mean, Leonard is the strongest Omega. What made him not want to leave was not the Alpha's marking of the Omega, but love for me. Stubborn, radical, pure love. How painful must he have felt when he said he didn't want the ring, and how disappointed was he in me? Did he think my soul was really dead and would never come back? I simply dare not and cannot think about it too much. He brushed his fingers across Leonard's cheek. His once healthy and rosy complexion was now extremely pale, and his skinny body felt cold when touched by his fingers. My heart ached and I vowed to spend the rest of my life trying to win back his broken heart. The slender eyelashes moved suddenly. Leonard on the hospital bed was slowly opening his eyes. His voice was hoarse. "You cried?" The moment we looked at each other, I felt alive. I wanted to hold him in my arms, but I was afraid he would get scared again, so I didn't dare to move. Leonard looked at me with a dull and confused look in his eyes. He slowly raised his hand and brushed my eyes with his cold fingers. Tears stained his fingers. Leonard spoke with difficulty. You don't cry with this face, Si?" He kept silent, but I understood his unspoken meaning in an instant. When I was young, I was retaliated against by my rival and failed to negotiate a deal worth hundreds of millions. After being scolded by my relatives for not being able to bear the burden for the rest of my life, I hid on the rooftop and cried alone. Leonard found me, stayed with me, and looked at me with the same look. He said, "Marvin, please don't cry. It hurts my heart." Now, even if he thinks that the soul in this body is not his Marvin, still showing a distressed expression, I couldn't bear it any longer and hugged Leonard on the bed. His strength was so great that it seemed as if he would melt into my bones and blood. Leonard looked listless and listless. "You must be disappointed that I didn't die." "Oh, I'm not disappointed. After all our family's money is with me. But I can't wait for him anymore, and I won't spend another penny on you." In the past, Clarence allowed Leonard to stay here. The most important reason is that he has no ability to make money in this world. All my cards were handed over to Leonard since the day he proposed, and I promised that they would be under his control forever. I sighed. The past is too painful to recall. But I'm not Clarence. I am Marvin who loves Leonard dearly. I patted Leonard's back gently and explained everything to him as best I could. "Baby, you've waited for me. I didn't do anything before. Someone else took over my body. Now that I'm back, I won't make you sad again. Really, I swear. I held Leonard's face in my hands and looked him in the eye, eager to prove myself. Look, when you jumped off the building just now, I was willing to jump with you. Only Marvin is willing to die with you, right? Maybe my eyes are too pious. Or maybe Leonard understands that only the real me is willing to love him with my life. Leonard's expression relaxed for a moment. Tears rolled down his face and he threw himself into my arms, sobbing aggrievedly. You bad guy, I thought you were fucking dead and you would never come back. I kissed away his tears. I'm bad, you can beat me, okay? My baby is still here, why wouldn't I come back? Leonard delivered a powerful punch. He held my face again and sucked my snot hard. Whoa, let's stop fighting. We finally got back. What should we do if we can't beat him up? I have taken good care of your body. Tell me, is all this true? Have you not lied to me again? I hugged him lovingly. That was really... My voice was interrupted by a loud kick on the door. Pamela Patterson, the beta that Clarence was having an affair with, walks in. She stepped on her high heels, walked in front of Leonard and lowered her head. Oh, the poor little dog got fooled again. She shook her hair and naturally put her arms around my neck. Marvin, just tell him directly. The reason we didn't let him die is because... You farted. I pushed Pamela away and looked at Leonard hurriedly. But Leonard had already broken free from my arms. He laughed at himself. Fuck, I got fooled again. I'm such a complete idiot. No. What I fear most is that he will show this expression of despair. I quickly explained, this is all what they discussed them. I am the devil that has taken over my body. I am Marvin, baby. What them? Pamela screamed as she fell to the ground. That's exactly what you said. You said you were going to sleep with Leonard, so that he would give you his fortune right away because he was still loyal to you. Leonard said, oh, let me sort out the sequence. You think I love you, so you want to have sex with me. But I don't agree and you want to force it, but I will kill myself with a knife. In order to prevent me from dying, you pretended to live and die with me, and you had already placed an inflatable cushion outside the window, right? I shook my head vigorously. No, no. Leonard gave me a disdainful look. What a joke. Do you think I'm following you and pestering you because I like you? He looked at me and spoke each word carefully. The one I like is Marvin, and I follow you to protect his body. I really don't care whether you live or die, but if this body dies, my husband won't come back. How can I tolerate that? But... Leonard lowered his eyes, looking lonely. He hasn't come back for so long, I've faced reality, I know he's dead. We agreed to be together for life, he broke his promise, but I can't break it. I'm not dead. My heart felt like it was being pinched hard by nails. It hurts and aches. If I don't come back, will Leonard commit suicide for love? Pamela didn't believe it and screamed, when did you recognize it? Leonard held his cheeks with both hands and looked very calm. At the beginning, how could I not recognize his soul when I loved him so much? My heart trembled. This kind of sentence is more like a confession than any sweet words. He expressed his love so calmly. He loves not my body but my soul. Pamela looked a little broken. So what if we know he's not Marvin? This body has been taken by Clarence, and the person Clarence likes is me. She took my arm again. Clarence, since he's already recognized us, why don't we just stop pretending? Break him. This property is our marital property. It's enough for us to live comfortably. I squinted at her. Who do you want to cripple? Pamela pointed at Leonard and shouted, him. Although Leonard appeared calm, his hands beneath his sleeves were shaking. I raised my hand. Leonard closed his eyes immediately. This kind of conditioned reaction requires countless injuries to develop. I felt so distressed that I leaned over. In Pamela's surprised eyes, I kissed Leonard's trembling eyelashes. Leonard opened his eyes helplessly. Even if you don't believe it, I'm really back. I won't allow anyone to humiliate you in front of me. Didn't wait for his answer. I waved my hand. I slapped Pamela to the ground, her mouth full of blood. She covered her face, incredulous. You hit me? You actually hit me? I stood up and put my foot on her neck. So what? Did you stop bullying my Omega when I wasn't around? I grabbed Pamela's hair and smiled at Leonard. Baby, the situation down there is a bit unsightly. I'll go out and fix it. Don't worry, I won't leave it unharmed. Pamela yelled anxiously. I am a woman. How can you hit a woman? I shook my head. No. You and the person inside me are both scumbags, so please don't insult women, okay? I was about to walk out with Pamela in my arms, and Leonard was watching quietly. Just as I was about to close the door of the ward, Leonard moved. He swallowed and slowly stretched out his hands towards me. Don't rush to hit her. Come and hug me first. Marvin. 11. So, I couldn't hear anything. There was silence between heaven and earth. Only Leonard's words were timid but firm. I threw Pamela away. He walked over and picked up Leonard with one hand. Leonard put his arms around my neck. The thin body leaned in my arms. I put my arms around his back and my nose started to feel sore. When I was 15, I fell in love with him at first sight. From then on, I never left him alone and never let him face any danger alone. At the age of 25, I proposed to him with a ring I designed myself. Leonard agreed, blushing. At the wedding that year, I clearly swore an oath to God. I said I would be good to Leonard for the rest of my life and would not let him suffer or be tired. He can only shed tears on the bed, and I will take care of all the difficulties he has outside the bed. But now, my beloved Omega is so thin that I can even feel the bones on his spine. Tears welled up in my eyes. Leonard leaned into my arms, whispering softly. It's you, isn't it, Marvin? I still recognize you. I nodded frantically. He gave a bleak smile. Commanding me, call me baby, Marvin. I whispered in his ear, baby, baby, baby. Leonard's rose-scented pheromones came out. It drifted away along with his emotions, but the concentration was very light. I turned my head and saw that the red and swollen gland was covered with dense pinholes. It's all because of you. Leonard interrupted me by biting the side of my neck. His voice was vague and contained a grieved tone. Just let go and leave. I've been alone during my estrus period, and I've taken so many inhibitors. You know I'm afraid of pain. A fishy, sweet and warm liquid flowed down the side of my neck, and I squinted in pain. Leonard bit hard. You idiot, you can't even take care of your own body and let someone steal it? How can you be so useless? You promised to be with me day and night, but you left me to suffer alone for so long. I'm going to eat you. I tilted my head back and slowly released my soothing pheromones. Leonard leaned over the side of my neck and took a deep breath. Then he covered my wound with his hand. Okay, that's enough punishment. You are not allowed to blame yourself anymore. He turned my face and looked very serious. My glands are going to fail. Taking good care of me is the best way to make up for it. Do you understand? My tears flowed even harder. Leonard has never been one to act coquettishly. I also understand that he is only trying to alleviate my guilt by biting and blaming me. But how could I not remember how painful his estrus period was over the years? That bastard Clarence came from a world without the 3 secondary sexual characteristics of alpha, beta, and omega. Male and female are the only 2 genders. The relationship between this body and Leonard is, in his eyes, abominable homosexuality, which is disgusting. So Leonard, who was seeking comfort during his estrus period, was shot right in the face. The most intense time, Clarence held down the powerless Omega, banging his head against the wall again and again. To this day, dark bloodstains remain on the wall. And under Leonard's bangs is a hideous scar. Okay. Leonard slaps my hand away. It's all over. I've had enough of hugging you. Put me down. I feel a little uncomfortable. I quickly put Leonard on the bed and rang the bell for the doctor. Leonard leaned in my arms, yelling at me to release enough pheromones. The frequent release of high concentrations of pheromones deprived my brain of oxygen. But Leonard's raised mouth corners made me not care about anything. It smells so good. I haven't smelled it in a long time. It feels so comfortable to be surrounded by this scent. He took deep gulps and rubbed it against my chest. I hugged him. Happiness is embodied at this moment. I don't even want to think about revenge or tomorrow. I just want time to freeze at this moment. But as he inhaled, Leonard's breathing rate began to increase. A familiar blush broke out on his face and sweat covered his back. A unique rose scent lingers in my hair. This is Leonard's estrus period has come early. I kept pressing the call bell, while wrapping Leonard with a quilt. Then he hid far away. In recent years, this body had never experienced any kind of relief while in Leonard's care. Once attracted by the Omega's pheromones, the army was immediately defeated. I was so scared of losing control and hurting Leonard. As soon as the doctor entered the room, he sneezed. The pheromones are so strong. Are you going to beat me up? I pointed at a distance. Leonard twisted in agony under the quilt, and the doctor rushed forward to check on him. He clicked his tongue. Is this your Omega? I nodded. The doctor's eyes suddenly turned murderous when he looked at me. For too long he hasn't had enough alpha pheromones to comfort him, and now he's suddenly inhaled so much. Are you going to kill him? The estrus period has come early. You are his alpha, why don't you care about him at all? I pursed my lips. My bad, doctor. Can you please tell me how I can help him feel better? The doctor lifted Leonard's collar. A rubber-gloved finger gently pressed against Leonard's swollen gland. He took another breath. We can't use suppressants anymore. If we continue, his glands can be directly removed. Looking at his condition, it seems that he has not received adequate care during each estrus period. I was so ashamed that I felt embarrassed. I'll be careful next time. What should I do now? Strengthen the mark. The doctor rolled his eyes at me. Did a dog eat all the physiology lessons you took in junior high school? To put it bluntly, sleep, a good sleep. The doctor left for several seconds and I held on to the wall to prepare myself mentally. Until Leonard's groan interrupted my thoughts. He had already thrown the quilt on the ground. He pushed up the hospital gown, revealing her jade-white belly. The two slender legs were twisted together, and even the toes were tense. The Omega breathed heavily. Every time I exhale, I smell the rose pheromones that fascinate me. I squatted in front of him and felt my blood boiling. An Omega in estrus is a fatal attraction to the alpha who marks him. But I can't lose my mind. Seeing Leonard changing his posture, I pulled out the knife he had used and cut a deep gash on my back. The stabbing pain instantly ran up my spine. I broke out in a cold sweat, and my boiling blood finally cooled down. Still afraid of hurting Leonard, I patted his back gently and comforted him. I'll help you, okay? Trust me. Leonard's eyes were moist as water. He nodded and let me press him under me, just burying his face in my arms shyly. But the exposed earlobes are still red. How could anyone have the heart to hurt such a cute Omega? I liked him so much that I wanted to eat him whole, but I still had my patience and carefully took off his clothes. But the moment my hand touched Leonard's bare skin, he shuddered violently. He quickly picked up his clothes to cover his chest and jumped into the corner like a frightened little rabbit. He was trembling, and the look in his eyes when he looked at me was no longer one of shyness and tenderness, but rather one of extreme fear. Don't come over here. 15. My heart sank. Under the stimulation, Leonard mistook me for the devil. I knew it, even though he had just mentioned the estrus period over the years in such a relaxed tone. But those humiliations still remained in his memory, difficult to erase. As soon as he returned to a similar scene, it haunted his mind again. He couldn't tell the difference between reality and nightmare. My alpha instinct made me release a large dose of pheromones to soothe him, but he covered his nose and refused to ingest it. He was still mumbling. Calm down, don't lose your composure. If you inhale too much, you'll lose your composure. But my pheromones are natural soothing agents for him, and he can't lack any of them. I thought about it. The pheromones were forcibly taken back, and windows were opened for ventilation to reduce the pheromone concentration. Then he approached Leonard cautiously, took off his lemon-scented coat, and wrapped it around him. Leonard was distracted for a moment. After he came to his senses, he struggled like crazy. He waved his arms vigorously and kept pushing me back. His legs kept kicking and he whimpered, Don't touch me, get away. Get away! The sharp nails scratched my cheeks and arms. I felt a pang of sadness in my heart. How could anyone have the heart to stimulate such a good omega to the point of stress? I held his face in my hands and gave him a very gentle kiss on the corner of his lips. Leonard went from struggling to slowly calming down. Baby, I looked him in the eye, my voice firm. Look into my eyes. I'm Marvin. It's the Marvin who would use his body to protect you in a car accident. It's the Marvin who dared to jump off a building with you. It's the Marvin who stayed with you for 10 years. Leonard's eyes were confused. He reached out and touched the scar on my waist. At that time, your intestines were about to fall out, and I was afraid that you would die. Yes. I held Leonard's hand and kissed it softly on my lips. As long as you are here, I will not die. As long as you are here, I will come back. Leonard burst into tears in my arms, as if he wanted to cry out all the sadness and grievances. He finally spoke. Marvin, I hate you so much. Because of you, I am no longer myself. But I also hate myself. Before I got married, I always laughed at those omegas who were abused. I told you that if you dare to do anything bad to me, I will cut you into pieces, or at worst I will go to jail. Leonard's tears flowed into my chest. It burned my skin. He murmured again. But I'm more worried about you, you know. I'm afraid you'll die. But I'm worried that you're not dead. If you're not dead, and something goes wrong with this body, you'll never be able to come back. I pressed my hand against Leonard's forehead. It turned out that he was so frightened without my knowledge. Waiting alone is not scary. The scary thing is that waiting is hopeless. That's why Leonard became confused. My heart felt like it was pierced by a needle and broke. Endless suffocation surged into my heart and I couldn't breathe. Leonard was calm, and I wrapped him up tightly, held him in my arms, and patted him. Don't worry, I'm really back. If he dares to come again, I will tear him to pieces to avenge you. Okay. Leonard grabbed my sleeve. He turned slightly to the side, revealing the glands on the back of his neck, and his earlobes were stained a deep red. Bite me? 16. The omega's glands were exposed in front of me, releasing a sweet smell. For Alpha, it's like a cat meeting catnip. I resisted the urge to bite down. He swallowed and shook his head. No, your glands haven't recovered yet. Leonard snorted coldly and pushed me down with his backhand. My head hit the headboard and I felt dizzy for a moment. When he reacted again, his hands were already controlled by Leonard. He straddled my waist. If you don't bite me, I'll bite you. After saying that, I felt a sharp pain on the side of my neck. Omegas are naturally unable to mark alphas, and the injection of pheromones made me feel nothing but pain. I groaned. He held him in his arms with his backhand. Baby, you're so hot. I like him so much that I can't wait to stuff him into my mouth and eat him. But now you really can't bite the gland. I put my hand under Leonard's collar and gently rubbed his skin. Leonard's body suddenly softened into a puddle of water and melted in my arms. The omega was distraught and hummed pitifully. An indescribable feeling arose in my heart. I suddenly felt something was wrong. Just as I was about to speak, I felt like I was sucked away by a vacuum cleaner and fell into the glass house. The next second, I saw my hands grabbing Leonard's hair. Throw him hard to the ground. Leonard's face was still flushed. He looked over confusedly and shuddered. You are. I hear my own voice. You stinky bitch, you dare to touch me? Do you want to die? 17. Clarence is back. I slammed the glass in front of me desperately. An electric current rushed to my heart, and I convulsed and lost consciousness. When I woke up again, I was in a small room. I moved my hands and found that it was my body that was under my control. Then, what about Leonard? I stood up immediately, but felt a sharp pain in my buttocks. My legs went limp and I fell to the ground. I was surprised when I saw the blood-soaked panties. When was I? 6,204. 6,204? The door was kicked open from the outside, and a burly man walked in and grabbed me by the collar. Clarence, what the hell are you doing? I'm calling you, you know. Clarence. I was so surprised that I pointed at myself and said, Me? I was answered with a punch to the face. My eyes suddenly became blurry, I was thrown to the ground and kicked several times in the abdomen. The big man pulled me up again and asked harshly, "How dare you turn on the gas stove? What? You want to commit suicide with natural gas? So you can go back to your crappy game world? What a foolish dream." The big man pointed at my nose. "Even if you die, you can't escape. Your father gave you and your sister to me as payment for a debt. You are my own pets. You don't want me to touch your sister? Fine, I'm going to fuck you. It's useless even if you object." As an alpha, I have a strong physique. But here, I was powerless to struggle and could only be pressed to the ground and rubbed. But where is this place? Is it Clarence's world? What about Minecraft? A terrible thought came to my mind, and I asked him breathlessly, "What game are you talking about?" "You're asking me?" The big man grabbed my neck with his backhand and pushed me to the ground. The technique is the same as Clarence. He threw the iPad in my face. "I'll let you play, go ahead." I was hit so hard that I was dizzy. After the big man left, I quickly turned on the game console. On the screen, a little man dressed like Leonard was tied to the head of the bed, his eyes full of fear. And a little man who looked very similar to me was flicking open a lighter and lighting the curtains. My heart was shocked. This seems to be Leonard and Clarence who took over my body again. A line of words floated across the screen. It was said by Clarence. "Don't live anymore. Let's die together." In a flash, a raging fire broke out in the ward. Clarence turned around and gave the screen a creepy smile. This smile chilled me to the core. "Just, why are you so happy? Marvin, I want you to watch Leonard die, and you can't do anything about it." The fire on the screen is growing. Leonard was tied to the head of the bed and couldn't move. He struggled hard and kept calling my name. And I was outside the screen, running around in circles in a panic. I accidentally tripped over something on the ground. That's a book. I kicked it away randomly, but my eyes were attracted by the open pages of the book. The truck crashed into the car. At this critical moment of life and death, Marvin held Leonard in his arms. The flying glass scratched Marvin's waist deeply. The intestines were exposed through the wound. My hand that was turning the page of the book paused. "What's this?" "This is the past between me and Leonard." Why is it recorded here?" "Oh." I flipped through the book randomly. In the author column, it says, "Pamela. This is the female beta that Clarence likes." I put the book down, and I was so frightened that my whole body began to tremble. The whole story between Leonard and I is actually a novel. So now, how can I go back to the book and rescue my Omega? A flash of inspiration. I remembered what the big man said. Commit suicide with natural gas and return to the game world. This is why my body was taken away from me just now. I put down my pen and closed the book. Push open the window resolutely. I looked back at the iPad whose entire screen was on fire. "Leonard, if I can go back, I will rescue you. If not, we die together." I jumped off a tall building. 19. I was in the hospital again. Only this time, I had my own body, outside of Leonard's hospital room. The doors and windows reflected the raging fire. The doctor was driven aside while the firefighters were racing against time to break the lock of the door. I pushed through the crowd and got to the front, but was separated by firefighters. "Danger! Don't come near!" I yelled. I saw he put on several locks, and now they are all burned out and can't be opened. "Let me do it." Ignoring the firefighters' advice, I rushed to the front and slammed the door hard with my body. Again and again, loud noises echoed through the corridor. The crowd that was bustling at the beginning became quiet. They all looked at me with their mouths wide open. I had no time to pay attention to him, and I kept shouting Leonard's name while crashing. With a loud bang, the door was pushed open by me. I grabbed a wet towel to cover my mouth and nose and rushed in, but was stopped by the doctor again. He said sharply, "Leave professional matters to professionals." "But that's my Omega." I rushed into the sea of fire. Tongues of burning fire licked up my back and pain exploded throughout my body. I gritted my teeth and persisted, and finally found Leonard at the bedside. He hung his head and his arms drooped limply. It's like being dead. The fear in my heart exploded, and I quickly took off the wet towel from my face and covered Leonard's face with it. When he wanted to pick him up, he found that Leonard's wrists were cuffed and locked tightly to the head of the bed. Without saying a word, I took out a knife and cut the handcuffs. Marvin. Leonard, who was semi-conscious, opened his eyes. "It's me," I answered loudly. The thick smoke choked my throat and I couldn't stop coughing. Leonard raised his hand and ran his fingertips across my nose. "Idiot, come back, what are you doing?" "To die with you." No matter how hard they tried, they couldn't open the handcuffs, and the fire blocked the door again, preventing the firefighters from entering. Tongues of flames bit at my feet, my clothes were burned off, and my skin was burned so hard that it hurt. Pain is wreaking havoc all over my body. But I picked up Leonard, even though he would feel the pain a second later than me. Leonard leaned on my shoulder and fell silent. "Well, I am just a paper man, and even if I pick up a pen, I don't have the ability to rewrite the story." I hugged Leonard tightly and closed my eyes. Just at this moment, a high-pressure water jet shattered the glass and rushed in from outside the 3-meter-high building. The firefighters slowly ascended the ladder. His face was dark, but he had big white teeth. "Hey comrade, you have to trust the soldiers." 20. "Brother soldier, you are so handsome." They opened the shackles on Leonard in 2 or 3 moves. I held him in my arms and took the ladder, but just as we reached the first floor, we were stopped by someone. He was dressed strangely, with his entire body hidden in a black robe. When he opened his mouth, he heard a familiar voice. "But why are you able to come back? Why are you still alive?" "It's Clarence. He actually has a physical body?" I carried Leonard onto the stretcher, then turned around and quickly pushed Clarence to the ground. "Why can't we live? Before, I was locked up and couldn't beat you up. Now, can you hide from me?" I grabbed Clarence by the collar. Every punch he received was stained with blood. He completely paid back what Clarence had done to Leonard before. Clarence was dying but still screaming. "You are committing a crime." I moved closer to Clarence's face. "I'm just a paper man. What crime have I committed? As long as I erase this text, no one will remember it." Clarence shuddered. "You know." He closed his eyes tightly, and when he opened them again they were full of blood. When a person is about to die, he actually develops a sense of recklessness. He raised his head with an effort. He knocked me to the ground, and Clarence got up and rode on me. Clarence swung his fist and punched me again and again as if to vent his anger. I just hate it. I was sent by my father to pay off his debts. For the sake of my non-blood sister, I am willing to suffer for her. But what about her? She writes books about gay men. She also writes about you. Isn't this looking down on me? Wasn't I disgusting at that time? Not only did I write it, but it also became a huge hit, and I sold the IP to make a game. Okay, I won't bother with her. She has cancer. I like her. I am willing to suffer this for her. I am even willing to die with her. But I didn't expect that after I committed suicide, I didn't die, but took away your body. I wanted to go back to find my sister, but I didn't expect. I interrupted him sharply. I didn't expect that Leonard would not want you to die and would stubbornly guard this body. And you, who were bullied by men in your world, bullied Leonard in all kinds of ways after coming to this world. You felt the pleasure of controlling life and death. You never want to go back. But have you ever thought that Leonard is a real person? He is the one I hold in my hands. If you bully him, I will not let you go. I grabbed Clarence's coat, pulled it off, and pushed him to the ground. A bloody body appeared before my eyes. The body I jumped from the building in his world. He screamed and protected himself. When did you break free from me? Heh, from the beginning, I was able to defeat you. I sneered and took out a recorder. This world can't convict you, but what you just said was recorded. The Supreme Judge's Alliance should be able to imprison you for life. 21. This world is not unique. I knew it from the beginning. Because my father was once a member of the Supreme Inquisitor Alliance. Clarence travels through the world through 2 near-death experiences. Then I will use the complete death of his real body to prevent him from causing trouble again. On the Judge's Alliance. According to international Omega protection laws, Clarence is sentenced to death, and before his death he will suffer all the tortures Leonard has suffered. And Pamela, the beautiful beta girl created by Clarence's sister in her own image, deviates from the plot due to Clarence's instigation. As a result, he was sentenced to 30 years in prison by the Supreme Judges Union. By the time Clarence was taken to prison, his body had been restored to normal. But he and I look more and more different. I am sunny, cheerful, and confident. And he was gloomy. He looked at me with evil eyes. "You too will die." I smiled faintly. "It is known that this world is a book of your sister. Do you want to guess, for the last time? You clearly did not possess another body, so why do you still have a body after traveling through it?" Clarence's eyes lit up. "My sister is still alive." I snapped my fingers. Cancer is not a 100% fatal disease. Another question, who wrote this ending? Clarence's face turned pale in an instant. "What did you say?" "Marvin, explain yourself." "My sister wouldn't do this to me." I turned around and strode forward. No longer pay attention to his crying and shouting. I bought a bouquet of flowers for my favorite Omega. He happily held the flower in his arms. "Put your arms around my neck and inhale my pheromones." I smiled and gave my Omega more pheromones. Turning his head to the side, Leonard's glands have recovered under my care. Today, he is sunny and optimistic and has completely escaped from that nightmare. I didn't tell him that the world is just a book. Loving him is not the author's control. It's my only wish. But I still lied to Clarence. His sister Pamela actually died of cancer. Before jumping off the building, I wrote the ending with my own hands. I want Clarence to be punished in some form and pay the price for his evil deeds. As for Leonard and I, the last page of the book shows Marvin and Leonard hugging each other. They live happily together forever and grow old together. Just like now. I hugged Leonard and felt myself bubbling with happiness. "Hey!" Leonard patted me. "Give me a hug, I have good news for you." I immediately hugged him in my arms. "Rub it hard into the bones and blood." Leonard gave me a shove in annoyance. "Damn it, it's squeezing the baby." "What? Have a baby?" Joy seemed to explode from the bottom of my heart. I held Leonard high up in my arms and kissed him hard on the cheek. I swear, I am so content that I didn't shamelessly write all my wishes in the ending. This little baby is given to me by God. I picked up Leonard with one hand and smiled like a moron. Look, so what if this world is a book? Novels always have an ending. But those who love each other will always move forward firmly and bravely. Happiness for a lifetime.